right, we'll go ahead and get started and people will join us as they can. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this conversation this afternoon. We're very excited to have a chance to talk with Mayor Jim Donchess, who is our 56th mayor, was also our 51st mayor in the city, and certainly I would imagine we'll describe this time as right unprecedented. Whoever thought that we would be in the situation that we are today. So we're very grateful to have him here today. Just a couple of notes before we get started. We are recording this. We'll put it on YouTube afterwards. So if you have colleagues or someone who weren't able to join us today, that will be available. You do also have the option for Q&A. So if you hover towards the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button, which will enable you to ask questions as we go along. We're going to let the mayor have some time to speak, and then we did receive some questions in advance. I have a couple, and then certainly you're free to ask some questions that I will present to the mayor as we go. So with that, Mayor, I'm going to turn things over to you. Thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you, Kate, and members of the Chamber of Commerce. We did get together in February and talked about the state of the city at that time. And now, of course, 3 months later, the world is much, much different. But Kate, we talked about my mentioning a few of the things that were going on pre-COVID-19, maybe a little bit about our anti-COVID-19 efforts, what's being done to contain the virus, and then how city and community projects have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, as we discussed in February, we were working on the budget, the problems with the fact that healthcare costs are going up significantly. We were working on the riverfront, a lot of downtown things on the riverfront. We have a pending Performing Arts Center project. Panacek is locating downtown. We're working on a city, or we're beginning to embark on a city master plan. We're underway with the multi-year paving plan of action that's paving and what we call crack sealing a lot of streets. And we were working very hard on all those things, but then COVID-19 came along and has changed things dramatically, as everyone is aware. Of course, this has affected us all in many, many ways. It has been difficult for everyone. Not many of our small businesses, as you certainly know, have been very negatively affected. Some closed for months, people unemployed. And so we know that there is a lot of economic uncertainty and economic problems out there. If we watch the unemployment claims, at some point in May, 8,200 unemployment claims had been filed with the state of New Hampshire for New Hampshire residents. This doesn't include anybody from Massachusetts who would have been unemployed down there and has filed unemployment down there. So there's certainly economic dislocation. But it has affected everyone in the sense of the governor's stay-at-home orders and the necessity to undertake social distancing and all the other steps in order to contain COVID-19. And as I said, it's difficult for all of us, very frustrating to be at home, all these virtual meetings. It's much better to be in person on almost every instance. Also, schools are closed, have been difficult for parents. The remote learning is a challenge for teachers. Plus, we know that a lot of kids are not totally engaged. Either they don't have a computer or their families aren't really helping them that much. That's, I'd say, a minority of children, but certainly a significant number. But by undertaking all this, we have, by working together, we've really made a difference. I mean, even though we have to ask ourselves, do I have to wear these masks? What about, can I just go into work? What about going to a restaurant, whatever? Can I go to undertake my normal activities? But by making these sacrifices, and they're not small sacrifices, over a significant period of time, we have accomplished a lot, a major accomplishment by working together. And what have we done? We have contained the spread of the virus to a large degree. In Nashua, we have limited the number of cases so far to over 500. The number of active cases now is about 100. Rather than the other scenario where we would have had thousands of cases. Unfortunately, we've had around 18 people die here in the city. Most recently, a friend of mine, probably someone you know, a very generous, kind person for the city, Kevin Slattery, had been struggling with a very critical case of COVID-19 for months, couple of months, and he passed away in the last several days, and that's a big loss. So this is, is very personal for a lot of people who know one of the 18 victims. And had we not worked together, as I said, undertaking all of the social distancing and all of the steps that have been required, there would be a lot more than 18 people in our community. And as we do these things, we have to keep in mind that we are not only helping to protect ourselves, but really protecting other people we know, our neighbors, our friends, our families from getting this virus. Many people recover, most people recover, but for some it is very serious, leads to, in the end, death. So we have saved a lot of lives, and we've kept a lot of people much safer as a result of all the steps that we've taken. Now, in terms of what the city has done, I can't say enough about how much the city employees have really pitched in to make all this happen. Our public health department and the public health nurses have basically been working 7 days a week for months now. As testing has become available, they hold at least weekly for a while. It was much more often than that, testing clinics where people can come and be tested for COVID-19. In addition to that, they work with every patient who is COVID-19 and might be at home, not hospitalized, in terms of giving them any help or advice they need. Also being very involved with contact tracing, it's called. So if a person is positive for COVID-19, test positive, there's an investigation done. That person is interviewed or talked with in detail about people they've had contact with in the period of time before they became symptomatic. Then those people are contacted to let them know that they potentially have been in contact with someone who tested positive and potentially have been exposed to the virus, and that they should quarantine so that they don't infect potentially someone else. This contact tracing has been found to be very effective in the United States and elsewhere, other countries, in helping to limit the spread of the virus. So our public health people are very involved with that, as long as also a lot of community education. But also our emergency management staff, particularly Justin Cates, who leads that, has worked with all city departments to design ways that they can operate remotely, and a set of procedures and guidelines under which we operate to protect the public and city employees from the potential spread of COVID-19. Emergency management was also very active in working with the state of New Hampshire in setting up the alternative care site at Nashua South. The idea there being that if there were a surge in cases which exceeded the capacity of the hospitals to handle everybody, that there would be an alternative place where some hospital patients could be taken care of with medical staff. Now that's being phased out now, because in the end, as a result of everything that we did together, there was not the surge that could have been possible. We have very frequent calls with the hospitals, and they're now running about 10 positive cases, 2 hospitals together. But at one point it was 20, approximately up to about 20, but it could have been a lot more. Down in some of the cities close to us, Lowell, Lawrence, there were many, many more cases, 5 or 6 times as many cases in each of those communities, many more hospital patients. They did not reach overcapacity, but they came close. And so certainly had we not done all these, taken all the steps that you all know about, the situation would have been much, 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 much worse. Also, many people, volunteers, have really pitched in and helped out in many respects, making masks, distributing them. Also, our meals program, the NTS, National Transportation System, has been working with United Way and many volunteers, and Kevin Slattery was on the United Way board, many volunteers to distribute meals to the kids who normally eat free and reduced lunch meals, breakfast and lunch at school. So these buses go out daily and deliver meals to schools and to other sites around the city where kids can, which are not very close to schools, and where kids can pick up meals. And through all of the volunteers, many of them are the school department cafeteria workers. They have distributed tens of thousands of meals over the course of the last few months. And so they have to be thanked for everybody that's been contributing to all of that. So that's been another major community effort that's gone on to help support those in need while things are in the state of disruption that they are. So we begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel, we hope, in the sense that under the supervision of the governor and the various emergency orders, businesses and other institutions are beginning to gradually reopen. This is something many, of course, have been looking forward to for a long time. But we still need to keep a very careful watch on what's happening. I know that they're doing that at the state level. We're doing it at the city level, because if the number of cases begins to rise, then that has to be taken into account, because we're using, of course, a fact-based scientific approach towards how to deal with the virus. There are a couple of very big indicators that suggest reopening can occur. First of all, the percentage of positive tests has been on a decline now for about 40 days statewide. So at the beginning, when the tests started, the percentage of those who were tested that tested positive was above 10%, 11, 12%. Now it's drifted down to closer to 6%. That's all very good news. And in Nashua, most recently, the number of positive tests has been below 5%. So the decline in the number of positive tests is a very important factor in determining how we are doing in terms of preventing the spread of the virus. So we will continue to test. The state will continue to do that as well through not only our public health institutions, but many private providers, medical providers. And that evidence, those facts will be evaluated, I'm sure, daily, to make sure that we don't suffer a reemergence without being aware of it. So we don't know what the future holds. We don't know if there will be an reemergence of the disease later on in the fall, or as the reopening occurs as a result of larger gatherings and more people beginning to interact with each other. But we need to watch the situation carefully, because safety is and making sure that people remain healthy is of course, the number one thing that we need to think about and should be our primary concern. So what has City Hall, how have we been conducting operations? Well, first of all, essential functions continue. Of course, the police and fire departments are operating as always with protected PPE, they call it, personal protective equipment. But there have been a very limited number of cases in the police and fire departments, and that's very good. Public Works has continued to operate. We're still picking up the garbage. The paving program continues. That's being done principally with contractors, but they are out there working. So the critical functions have been continue. You're all aware, I'm sure, that the school department has been operating remotely since March. This has gone about as well as it could, but certainly, as I mentioned before, the fact that teaching over the internet is not as good as in a classroom, especially for younger children, especially for some children. And in addition, parents have to become engaged with education of their children, and certainly in a way that they had not been before. And many parents, in speaking about it with them, teaching is easier said than done. And they've, in some cases, found it challenging to try to supplement the efforts of the teacher. We do know that, again, that a number of kids have not necessarily been totally engaged with remote learning. Some families don't have a computer. Sometimes a child needs the support of parents to really undertake something like that. Maybe the parents are working, maybe the parents can't assist for whatever reason. So we know that some kids are kind of off the grid. And one thing we, of course, have to be concerned about, and this is not just Nashua, this is nationwide, is that kids who've been out of school for 6 months, and that really pretty much from March to for September, assuming school opens in September, will suffer from it, that they will not achieve the level of learning that they would have achieved. Recently, there's been some research out on this. The two universities, Brown and the University of Virginia, surveyed a lot of research regarding learning loss caused by absenteeism, as also regarding some of the natural disasters that have occurred, Katrina and other disasters like that, how that has affected the level of learning. And they found that it impacts kids differently, but that on average, kids do not accomplish nearly what they would. Maybe a third less in reading, maybe a 50% or more less in math, and some kids more than that. So one thing that we have to think about in terms of community priorities is that there are going to be kids coming back to school who are significantly behind, and if they do not catch up, then they will be behind indefinitely. That is an issue that I think the city needs to think about carefully. You might have noticed that during the pandemic, up till Monday, the fixed route bus systems were not operating. We closed those because of the danger that a bunch of people can congregating in a bus, maybe more than 10, more than what the governor wants, would have enabled the spread of the disease. So we were operating a call for ride system only. Now, as the reopening has begun, we have begun to operate 4 systems with spaced out seating 6 feet apart within the bus. People are required to wear masks in the buses. Now, I'm sure everybody at the chamber is interested in the steps we're taking to help small business recover, and that I know is very, and consider to be a top priority now that we are emerging from COVID-19. As I've already said, the small businesses have been hurt substantially, many of them, most of them. So we've, in the city, have taken some specific steps. First of all, we created a COVID-19 impact fund. So we assembled various sources of federal money, including some community development block grant money, about $1.2 million or $1.1 million, to provide grants and loans to small businesses and some nonprofits. We put out the application deadline, or put out the availability to apply. I think we got about 55 requests. The amount of requests exceeded the 1.1 million but not by too much. So we have a loan committee that is considering the grant and a loan applications, and have allowed a number of those. The average that we're trying to put out is about $25,000. Hopefully that will help. But of course, one very obvious thing that we've done is, and I'm sure everybody has noticed it, is in the downtown, we have narrowed the street by one lane in each direction and closed some of the parking right on Main Street. That is, of course, designed to help our restaurant and some of the other businesses downtown, bars, et cetera, to operate in a way that's consistent with the governor's orders, but at with many more patrons using the street outdoor dining as a way to be able to seat the customers. Now, the governor's order allowed it 2-3 weeks ago, allowed outdoor dining only, as long as tables were spaced 8 feet apart. So in response to that, the city, Tim Cummings, the city's economic development team, as well as the Board of Aldermen, acted quickly to authorize this outdoor dining. Public Works put the various barriers in place the day after it was authorized. And I have to say that to me, it has been a major success, in the sense that we've seen many people come downtown. We've begun to understand that downtown could operate differently than it did in the past. One problem for our downtown has always been that the street is so wide and there's so much traffic that it's not very pedestrian friendly from one side to the other. And it just gives, it's not that the pedestrian friendliness does not seem to be a big attribute of, or could be a much bigger attribute of Nashua's downtown. Now, with this project that we're undertaking, it's, I think, changed the environment, changed the atmosphere entirely. Many people are engaging in the outdoor dining. I think it creates a wholly different atmosphere for the downtown, much more festive. Now, some of it might be that people are just so glad to get out, but on the other hand, the umbrellas, and this is just stuff that's just been done in a couple of weeks, but all of the efforts that the businesses have taken to put up umbrellas, a little bit of decoration, has really improved, I think, the character of downtown. So as we continue to evaluate this situation, as the weeks go on, this is designed to stay in place till November 1st, I think. We need to consider whether we want to make this something we do every season. Because we need to keep in mind that the downtown is not a huge part of the economy, but a significant part of the economy. The downtown symbolizes the community itself. If you go to a town or a city with a dead downtown, it creates a very negative impression about the community as a whole. And the opposite is true. When you go to a downtown and you see that it's alive and active and vital, it makes you think very positively about that community and about the business climate and about potentially a future in that community. Now, so when I there's a U.S. Conference of Mayors organization which meets periodically, usually twice a year, or sometimes there's occasionally a kind of a side meeting. But when you talk with mayors around the country, I mean, without exception, are very focused on their downtowns, and for the reasons that I've discussed. Also, at least in meaning that it's a very important symbol and a significant part of the economy of any city. Also, when it comes to Nashua's downtown, because we grew in the way we did, in the sense that there was a central business district in a downtown, and then a more suburban growth in the neighborhoods surrounding the city, more in the outskirts, that occurred in the 60s, 70s, 80s, principally. The developmental focus was really out there rather than in the center of downtown. And we've been fortunate to be able to attract, but so therefore a major economic development opportunity is the downtown. So we've been fortunate in the last, a very important project for us was the clock tower project that occurred in the late 80s, of adding 350 or so units, probably about 600-700 downtown residents. Then the Cotton Mill project, Cotton Mill Square, 100 units, adding a couple hundred more residents. And then the Brady Sullivan Loft 34 project on Franklin Street, the conversion of the very dilapidated Nashua Corporation Mill into 200 units of housing. These are very important projects for the city, and help to provide walk-in customers for downtown businesses, which are vital to the success of any downtown. But one problem we face is we still have the kind of the urban renewal area that was torn down all through School Street, the Courthouse Oval, Bronstein. That area, like for many cities, that the tear down area has been very hard to fill in. We also are in a very poor census district downtown, even though Nashua is a relatively affluent community as compared with cities around us, Manchester, Lowell, Lawrence, the others. Overall, and on average, an affluent community, the poorest census district in the state of New Hampshire is right downtown Nashua. Now, we've also got, at the same time, a housing crisis in the city, where the vacancy rate is just incredibly low, less than 1%, which is 5% is considered sort of a healthy real estate market. We are, meaning healthy for landlords and a fairly strong market. We have less than 1%, like a 0.5% vacancy rate. That drives up rents, makes it difficult for people to move here, makes it difficult for people to move around. And so we need more housing of all types, market rate housing, more affordable housing. Now, as we discussed in February and have discussed at other times, we've been successful in introducing more housing to the downtown. Brady Sullivan, the one I mentioned before, 200 units. Also the affordable housing project, the workforce housing project on Marshall Street at East Hollis, and the Riverfront Landing project over near Hudson by the river, still in the downtown area, 500 or so units of downtown housing. But we definitely need more, both because of the housing shortage and also because we want to introduce new downtown residents. So we're working on a few things there. First of all, and there's some disagreement about this, but we, over the past 5 or 6 years, have been looking at the School Street parking lot, an underutilized parking lot, for the introduction of housing right in the central business district. Now, we have begun. We put out requests for proposal and filtered through all that. We located a developer who has worked successfully in Manchester on a parking garage and on a hotel, who would like to build 150 units of housing, market rate in this case, on the School Street parking lot. I consider this and so does our economic development team, our community development department, consider this a very important project for the city. The lot would be sold for a price of about net like 800,000, but they would also, but that's not really the most important thing at all. They would also rent spaces in the High Street parking garage, but would provide downtown residents, would provide tax base for the city, and help the small businesses downtown. If you think about it, when was the last time that from the ground up housing was built in the central business district of Nashua? And there was a small condo project, that being the Jackson Fall condos, 20 plus units there, built some 15 years ago maybe. That's it for the last 100 years. Otherwise, the housing has been conversions of existing buildings. Clock Tower, the Loft 34, Cotton Mill Square. These are all conversion projects. And the other so-called downtown housing is not really right in the central business district within an easy walk of Main Street. So this is a landmark project potentially for the city of Nashua. First time someone from the outside has come in and willing to invest that kind of money to build new housing, quality work right in the downtown. Now, could COVID-19 affect their willingness to do this? Hopefully not, at least in my view. But it could be the start of something more, a trend that's more significant. If we can make one project successful, then others could follow. And again, these downtown residents are critical to the success of small businesses in the downtown, and critical to the feel of the downtown. But we also have another potentially possible affordable housing project going on. The Housing Authority has announced that they are intending to work with Boston Capital. This is something that the city has encouraged for a long time, to increase the number of units at Bronstein, change its character, and increase the number of units from 48 to about 200, maybe a little less, mostly in a range of income, mostly affordable, but on a range of affordability levels. And this would be undertaken to ensure that the current residents would be ensured a place to live there, same as they do now, but with a better environment, better set of circumstances, and would provide an additional 150 units of affordable housing to Nashua, and again, helping to meet that need. So that's a project that we need to work on carefully. The back to School Street, there have been some reservations expressed by some of the neighbors. I mean, I have to be straightforward about that in terms of disruption during construction or the long-term effects. We have a casino there, and they're very concerned, and that's been an important business for the city. They're concerned about parking, but the High Street parking garage is a very, 100 feet, 150 feet away. That is an underutilized garage at nighttime, especially at nighttime. Our surveys show that 20 to 25% is occupied, leaving 75 to 80% unoccupied. That is enough to meet any of the housing needs any of the parking needs that the School Street project would need, as well as meeting the casino's needs as well. And of course, there's also street parking. We would work with them to ensure that the people would know where to park, and are willing to make sure that everybody that comes there knows that Parking is available very close by. So I am confident that that the casino can continue to operate and thrive uh, after we introduce new housing to the city. Another thing that's going on in that uh, that exact neighborhood is the bringing Panacek back home, the headquarters from Merrimack back to Nashua. You might recall that, of course, Panacek was a Nashua company. They were located, their headquarters on High Street for a long, long time. Then they moved to 4 Water Street. That project, they were there for a number of years, and then around when the kind of the fight started between the city and Panacek over the eminent domain, I wasn't in office then, but they moved to Merrimack. So we have worked with them very carefully. We were very interested in getting them to come back downtown. So they've agreed to occupy the courthouse oval under a long-term lease. Improvements are going on right now. There's construction going on there right now because that will be expanded. That will bring 60, won't create jobs because those jobs already exist. But for Nashua, there will be new jobs. They weren't here. They weren't downtown. They're up in the woods of Merrimack for the last 15 years or so. So that is another important thing that's going on. Additionally, the riverfront, you might see that we have a riverfront master plan in the works. The first part of the work has been done. There's a lot of engineering going on right now where we can introduce more suspended walkways like you see around Peddlers, lighting along the riverfront, also some dock space and many other improvements running from the bridge, Main Street Bridge west towards Mine Falls, and then after that east from the Main Street Bridge towards BAE. That will help to greatly enhance the city, focus on the beauty of the city's namesake, the Nashua River, an attribute that really has been underappreciated, overlooked for a long time. And we need to really highlight and display the river and longer term, the Merrimack as well, but particularly the Nashua River downtown. Now, many of these steps that we're taking are the housing, the riverfront, so many other things, kindergarten. We want to make Nashua a place that millennial generation, the generation younger than them, that they want to move to the city. So the things like, and they want to live here. The kind of the atmosphere of the place is very important in the evaluation which the younger generations think about in deciding where to locate, where they want to live, where they want to educate their kids. The narrowing of the street. If you go out there now, you see how many young people are out there in the expanded outdoor dining. But just almost everything that we're trying to do. The scooters that we have and we hope to reintroduce, the housing downtown, the improvement of schools, everything. Of course, we want this to be a great place for those of us who already live here, and we want to improve it day by day. But also, we want to make it a community that that will have an even stronger future. And to do that, we need to be a place that these young people want to live. We are in competition with other cities, Manchester and some of our neighbors, even Boston. But we have the advantage over like a Boston that it's far more affordable here than living downtown Boston. Most people, can't afford that at all. So we want to be able to offer some of the amenities that a larger city can offer, while at the same time providing a quality of life and an affordability aspect that is very attractive. Anyway, Kate, so I've gone a long time, but you asked me a bunch of big questions. So I tried to address, a lot of what's going on. I don't know, we're into this 40 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, so I know you have other commitments, so we want to make
Well,
sure we get
so I'm available to answer questions, but I wanted to give you, I think you asked for sort of a comprehensive look of what's going on, and
yeah, that was
I
fantastic.
thought I would give it.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. So
All right.
Norm from the Boys and Girls Club said, thank you for your leadership and decision-making process during these challenging times. What do you think our schools may look like in the fall?
Well, nobody knows for sure. I mean, the school department is considering three alternatives. One, a continued remote learning environment. Number two, a completely open environment. Number three, something more like a hybrid, some remote learning, a lot of kids in school. Now, of course, we, in all these decisions, are guided first by what the state of New Hampshire says. I mean, they will determine whether, under what conditions a school department can operate. But a school department can make their own decisions that would be, more oriented towards remote learning than the state would require. The point of it all is that we don't want some huge outbreak to occur in the fall as a result of a lot of kids getting together. I'm sure we won't continue complete remote learning, even though that's one of the things on the table. Will there be just a quote, return to normal, or a situation where kids are spaced apart, maybe with some remote learning, maybe even double sessions? I mean, I don't know. That nobody knows. I think the school board is discussing that, and it depends really on the science, on the facts. How are things emerging? How is the disease progressing? Is there a vaccine? Is there an reemergence in the fall? Is there a reemergence when reopening begins to occur more actively? So we don't know the answer to that, and we just want the kids to learn as much as they can, and at the same time to keep them and everybody else as safe as possible.
For sure, right. And we're seeing, great trends in New Hampshire, but you look at somewhere like Arizona as a result of reopening, right? And things are not faring so well. So I'm sure it's hard to know. We do have another question from Jim Rafferty. So please tell all the city employees they've done a great job during COVID-19 and we appreciate it. Parking study was contracted in early March. Where is that project?
Of course, that's in the works, but we have internally, now Jim I've been trying to, he's a very important downtown business owner, and we want to make sure that he prospers and thrives. He's expressed some reservations about School Street, so we're trying to persuade him that the parking situation is one that can work for everyone. So we're in the progress of, there's a study going on regarding the parking. It's been delayed to some degree by the COVID-19 situation. But we, of course, internally look at parking very carefully in terms of the supply of parking. I mean, that's not so difficult to analyze. We have around 3,000 parking spaces. Parking people can go out anytime and decide how many are being used. We certainly know how many leases we have and all that kind of thing. And so the supply of parking in downtown is significant. 3,000 spaces, many are unused, much of the time. The garages are underutilized. In terms of, but the parking study is more comprehensive. It is looking at issues like, what about the 2-hour limit? The 90-minute limit on Main Street. Should that be 2 hours? What about the fees? We're charging 75% at the top. Many other communities are charging more than that. Should the fees be raised? Now the fees do, and of course some people are going to answer absolutely not to that question, and maybe that will be the answer at the end of the day. But the reason that the fees do two things. Number one, they incentivize people to turn over. So the fees are higher on Main Street to try to get turnover, people moving in and out, so that, because before there were fees at all, or they were very low, employees and others would just park on Main Street all day long, which was terrible for the businesses because there were no available parking places close by. So that's one thing. Number two, under the system that was adopted in around 2013 or 14, all parking meter revenue that exceeds $728,000 is devoted to downtown projects. The Downtown Improvement Committee, which is populated by a lot of downtown businesses and their owners, they make recommendations which are generally followed regarding how to spend this extra money. So to the extent we generate more parking revenue, it's more investment in infrastructure and other improvement projects in the downtown area.
Thank you. So I know you're expected elsewhere, and so I don't want to keep you. Your staff was amazing to work with, and I don't want to get the chamber in trouble. But thank you. This was very helpful. I think we might have you back at some point. We'll do a book club. You have some great titles there behind you.
Well, we have to talk about what book to read.
Right. There's a lot to choose from. The Johnny Cash one is especially intriguing.
Oh yes. Well, that's probably, I don't know. We did Little Women at the 150th anniversary of the publication, and a couple of books related to downtown or community type issues.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, great. Thank you for being here this afternoon. We really appreciate your time. Again, this has been recorded, so we will put this up on our YouTube channel, and we'll be in touch and have you back soon.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mayor. Have a good afternoon, everybody.